Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you an updated version of the 4 pattern blocks that you need to make anything from scratch. So in this video, I'm going to draft all these patterns first, then I'm going to try it on a muslin fabric, and this is what a muslin fabric looks like. You can get it on Amazon or any other sewing store that is close to you. It's a test fabric so that you don't waste your money or time on an actual fabric, okay, on an actual fashion fabric. So this is usually recommended if you're going to test out whatever patterns you just drafted. After drafting my patterns, I test it out on a muslin fabric, and then I make changes on the muslin fabric. So if the collar is too tight or the armhole is too small or big, whatever the changes are, I'm going to mark it on that muslin fabric. Then I'm going to transfer the changes onto my actual pattern. When I'm done transferring the changes onto my pattern, I'm going to transfer the actual pattern onto a post board or cardboard, something that can last for a long time. Because when I draft on something like this, it's very finicky and it can rip at any time. But if I transfer it to something like a post board, it's going to be very sturdy and it's going to be very difficult to rip, and it's going to last a very long time. Bust measurement. So for the abdomen, measure 3 inches from the waist down and put a pin in it. Measure that and make sure that your tape is sitting right on top of the pins. The cross shoulder, which is from the center front to the shoulder tip. Cross chest, which is right here. One is your bust arc, which is from your center front to the side seam. A bust span, which is nipple to nipple. The waist arc is the center front to the side seam, and that's basically your waist circumference divided by 4. Center front to this point right here. That's the dart placement. Abdomen arc is from your abdomen, which is 3 inches below your waist, to the side seam. The hip arc will be measured from the center front to the hip, side seam at the hip, right here. Your hip depth is from the center front waistline down to the hip line, like so. The side length is from the armhole on the side seam down to the waist. The shoulder length is from the neck to the tip of the shoulder. So from the neck all the way to the tip of the shoulder. Side hip depth is from the side seam on the waist to the hip line. So you're going to measure it like this. Is the bust radius, which is the center front to the bust tip. That's the bust radius. The next one is the center length, which is from the neckline at the center front all the way down to the waistline. The next measurement is the full length, which is from the neck all the way down to the waist. The next measurement is the shoulder slope, which is from the tip of the shoulder right here all the way down to the waistline. And make sure that the tape touches the bust point. There is a measurement called the new strap measurement, which is from the neck at the shoulder line all the way to the side seam right here. That's the new strap. To take the measurement for the back neck, put a tape around your neck like this. Take the circumference of the neck. Whatever you get, divide that in 5, and that's going to be your back neck. So your back neck is your neck circumference divided by 5. Cross shoulder is from the center back to the shoulder tip, like this. And make sure that it's on the shoulder tip, right here. The next measurement is a cross back. A cross back is measured from the center back to 1 inch above your mid armhole. So this is the mid armhole. There's a red mark right here. So you're going to measure 1 inch above it. A cross back. Back arc is going to be from the center back to the bottom of the arm plate. So it's right here. This is going to be the back arc. Center back to side seam, that's the waist arc. The dart placement is going to be from the princess line to the center back. So this is the dart placement right here. Princess line to center back. Abdomen arc is the next measurement, which is basically 3 inches below the waistline. So you're going to measure from the side seam like this all the way to the center back. That's going to be the abdomen arc. The next measurement is the hip arc, which is from the center back to the side seam at the hip. The next measurement is the hip depth, which is the center back waist to the HPL line on the hip. So this is what it looks like. Finally, the center back length. The center back length is from the neckline all the way down to the waistline. When you take your measurements, make sure that you've written everything down in a notebook, because this is what you're going to be referring to. The first thing I'm going to do is get my full length, which is 17 inches. So from here, I'm going to draw 17 inches. And so if you look at my ruler, it says 17 inches on my ruler, and if you also look at the table, you can see that the squares represent an inch. So 1 square is 1 inch, 2 squares is 2 inches, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 inches. and B. Next line is A to C, which is across shoulder, and that would be 7 inches, or whatever your across shoulder is. From C, I'm just going to draw 3 inches down. So from B, I'm going to measure upwards, and that's going to be my center front length, and my center front length is 14 inches. 14, and I will mark D on this one, and I'll square out 4 inches inwards. From my B to my E is my bust arc, which is 10 inches plus 1/4 of an inch, would make it 10 1/4 inches. And I'll label this E. From E, I'm going to square up 11 inches. So we're not labeling that, we're just squaring it up. Anything that squares down, in or up, we're not labeling that. So B to G, the G is going to touch on my C line. So my B to G is my shoulder slope, and my shoulder slope is 16 3/4 inches. So I'll measure 16 3/4 inches right here and make sure that it touches on that C line. Draw my line, and that's going to be my shoulder slope, and I will label this as G. G to H is going to be my bust depth, and I'm measuring that on this GB line. So my bust depth is 9 1/2 inches. So G to H is going to be 9 1/2 inches. And this is H. So G to I is going to be my shoulder length, and my shoulder length is 5 inches, and making sure to touch it on the AC line. So this is going to be my I. I'm going to square down a line to intersect with my D line. So just draw a straight line to touch the D line. And we're not giving that a letter, we're just going to draw a straight line. So J to K is bust span. So make sure that you're drawing it through the H line. Not above, not below, but through it. Right here. And this is going to be J, and this is K. In order to get my D to L, I'm going to measure D to J and divide that in 2. So D to J is 7 1/2 inches. So this is going to be L. So L to M is going to be a cross chest, which is 6 1/2 inches. I'm going to square a guideline up and down M. So just add 1/4 of an inch there. So whatever you get across chest plus 1/4 of an inch. So my B to my F is going to be my dart placement, and that is 3/4 of an inch. The F. From F, I'm just going to go down about 3/16 of an inch. 3/16 of an inch, and then you mark that. So from F, go down about 3/16 of an inch, which is basically like 1/4 of an inch. So to get my new strap, I'll measure I to N, and that N has to touch the E line. So my new strap measurement is 17 inches plus 1/8 of an inch. This is going to be N. So from my N, I'm going to go upwards and measure my side length, and my side length is 7 inches, and that's going to be my O. And I'm going to call that O. So from N, I'm going to mark out by 1 1/4 of an inch, and I'll label that as P. P. N to O is 7 inches. I'm just going to drag my ruler out to get that, right? So that means I'm going to be missing at least 1/8 of an inch right here, which means it's going to curve actually, right? And then I'm going to draw, that's going to be my new P. So from that P, I'm going to draw to F. From my new P, I'm going to draw to my F. So N to O is 7 inches, which is my side length. I went out from my N by 1 1/4 of an inch, and I marked my P. And then I took that 7 inches that I got from my N to O, and I sort of moved it to my N to P, and I marked 7 inches here. However, because I moved it slightly over by 1 1/4 of an inch, it goes higher. The mark goes higher, and it's no more on the original P line. It's now at least 1/8 of an inch above P. but it still measures at 7 inches from P to O and 7 inches from O to N. Now that we're done with this, we're going to figure out how much space we're going to have in our dart legs. My waist arc is 7 3/4 of an inch. B to F is 3 1/4 of an inch. So 7 3/4 of an inch minus B to F, which is 7 3/4 of an inch minus 3 1/4 of an inch, will give me 358. To get my P to Q, I'm going to measure 358. So that's what I'm going to get here, 358. P to Q is going to be 358, and I'm just going to label that as Q. So now I'm going to draw a dart leg from K to F. Don't forget, I marked it right here, 1/4 of an inch below F, so I'm drawing it from K to that point that I marked it below the actual line. And that measures at 6 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to make sure that this line right here also matches this line right here. So 6 3/4 of an inch is K to F, and K through Q has to be 6 3/4 of an inch as well. So that means my new line is going to be shorter than the original line. But this is 6 3/4 of an inch, and this is also 6 3/4 of an inch, even though I lost about 1/4 of an inch right here. To get my new dart point, I'm going to go down by 5/8 of an inch. 5/8 of an inch right here. And I'm going to draw my new dart legs. Using my curve ruler, I'm going to join B to F and P to R. So I'm going to draw my armhole from G, touching M, and all the way to O. So that's the armhole. I'll draw my neckline from I to D, and I'm going to go in here by 1/8 of an inch. Like I'm going to pass this line by at least 1/8 of an inch. So the back of the bodice is going to be a lot different. We're still working with A to B, right? That's the full length. A to C is across shoulder, which is 7 inches, 7 inches in the back. So A to C will be 7 inches. So I'm going to mark this as C. We're 3 inches down from C. So B to D is center back length, which is 15 1/4 of an inch. Right here, and I'm going to call this my D. We'll square out 4 inches on D. B to E is back arc plus 3/4 of an inch. So my back arc is 7.5 inches plus 3/4 of an inch would make it this. And I'm going to call that E, and I'll square up from E. From E. So A to F is going to be my back neck plus 1/8 of an inch. So my back neck is 258 plus 1/8 of an inch right here. And I'm going to call this F. Mr. F. B to G is the shoulder slope plus 1/8 of an inch. So my shoulder slope is 16 3/4. I'm making sure that my G touches the C line. So from here to G is 16 3/4 plus 1/8 of an inch. And I'll call this G. So F to H is going to be my shoulder length plus 1/2 inch, and I'll be drawing past my G. So my shoulder length is 5 inches plus 1/2 inch, which makes it 5.5 inches. So that's my F to H. And I'm making sure that I'm also putting my ruler on the G line so that it's not below or above. 5.5 inches. And this is going to be H. And I'm just going to draw a line touching this D line right here, because that's going to be the guide for our back neckline. B to I is dart placement, which is 3 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to mark that as I. So in order to get B to J, I'm going to mark my waist arc. My waist arc is 658. Mark that, 658. Plus 1.5 inches right? That's for the dart intake, and 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance. So that's basically all of this. So my J is gonna be past my E. My J is right on the edge of my E. So I'm gonna mark that. The B to J is going to be your waist arc plus 1.5 inches for the dart intake and 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance. And that's how you get the J. Now to get your dart intake, you're gonna go from B to I. Wherever your I stops is where your ruler begins, and you're going to mark that dart intake, which is 1.5 inches right here. And I'm gonna call that K. So I'm gonna find the middle of my I to K, and that will be my L. So right here is L. On my J, I'm gonna go down by 1/16 of an inch, which is right here. The same thing that we did right here on the F, we're gonna do it here as well. But when I go down from here, I'll mark it as my M. From my M to my N is going to be side length, which is 7 inches. So M to N is 7 inches. If M to N is 7 inches, then my L to my O is going to be 1 inch less than M to N, which is 6 inches. So that my dart isn't starting on the same length as my side length. So 6 inches right here. I'm gonna draw my dart legs, and I'm gonna go 1/8 past I and K. Right here, and right here as well. So to get my P, I'm gonna measure this and divide it in 2. So F to H is 5.5 inches divided by 2 would be 2 3/4 of an inch. So that's how I get my P right here. I'm gonna mark that and label that as P. From P, I'm gonna draw a 3-inch line towards the direction of my dart, like this. That sort of matches with the dart leg underneath as well. So this right here is going to be my Q. So to get my R, I'm going to go P to R, which is 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll mark that. I'm gonna draw my dart leg from Q 1/8 of an inch past my R, and I'm gonna connect that to my F, and then connect that to F. So I'm gonna do that on the other side. I'm gonna go out by 1/4 of an inch right here, and I'm gonna measure Q to R, which is 3 1/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna make sure that it's the same amount on this side. That's 3 1/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna draw that line. I'm connecting this to my H. So the next thing I'm gonna do is measure my D to my B and divide that in 4. And that is my S. So I'm gonna draw my S to T, which is across back. And my across back is 658 plus 1/4 of an inch. 658 plus 1/4 of an inch. T. And I'll square up and down T. So I'll draw my armhole curve. I'm going to touch H, T, and N. To draw my neckline, I'm going to go up by 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to draw from my F to my D. The front, back. So this is what that looks like. The next thing we're going to do is this skirt pattern. For the skirt pattern, I want to draw my skirt length first. My skirt length is going to be 20 inches. A, B. So A to C is going to be center front hip depth. Depending on how tall you are, it could be 7, it could be 8, it could be 9, depending on how tall you are. But the standard waist to hip measurement is 8 inches. So let's just use 8 inches. and I'm going to make that my C. And my A to D is going to be my hip arc plus half an inch. My hip arc is 958 plus half an inch. Plus half an inch. And this is going to be my D. So whatever I get here is what I'm going to put on this side as well. So this is 10, 1, 8. And I'll do the same thing on this side. 10, 1, 8. And I'm going to draw a straight line connecting that. So I'm going to label this H, I, E, F, and J. This is the back, and this is the front. E to D is center back hip depth, which is 7 3/4. I'm just going to call that G. So A to H is going to be 958 plus half an inch, which is basically that. So D to K is my waist arc plus 1/4 of an inch and 2 inches for my dart intake. So my waist arc is 658 plus 2 inches for my dart intake and 1/4 of an inch for my ease allowance. So that's 658 plus 2 inches, 1, 2 inches plus 1/4 of an inch. Oh wait, sorry. 1, 2 inches, sorry about that, plus 1/4 of an inch, which makes it 2/4 of an inch. So to get your G to your K, it's your waist arc plus 2 inches for the dart intake and 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance, which makes it 2 1/4 of an inch extra plus your waist arc. And then I'm going to label that K. D to L is my dart placement, which is 278. Dart placement is right here. Well, this is going to be my L. So from L, I'm going to mark 1 inch from L. And I'm going to measure 1/4 of an inch, 1 1/4 of an inch right here. And then I'll mark my next 1 inch. The space you need to leave from one dart to the next is 1 1/4 of an inch. It's gonna square up and down from K. For my front waist arc, I'm gonna go in by 7 3/4 of an inch plus 1 inch for my dart intake. 7 3/4 plus 1 inch for my dart intake and 1/4 of an inch as well for ease allowance. So that's going to be my M. H to N is going to be my dart placement, which is 3 1/4 of an inch. Like I said, the dart placement in front is not going to be the same as the dart placement at the back because there's a lot more going on in front than there is at the back. It's 3/4 of an inch. So for this one, I'm going to mark 5/8 of an inch. 5/8 of an inch is going to be this. Mark 1 5/8 of an inch. After marking 5/8 of an inch, I'm going to measure 1 1/4 of an inch right here. And then mark another 5/8 of an inch. Right? So these are the darts. The front and for the back. And I'm going to square up and down from M like I did on K. So C to P is going to be the side hip depth, and my side hip depth is the side hip depth 8 1/2 right here, and I'm going to measure the same thing on this side as well. Side hip depth is 8 1/2 right here. So I'm going to label that as P, and this is going to be Q. I'm going to join my curve. I'm going to draw my curve from my P to my C and my Q to my C using my curve ruler, and I'm making sure to touch on this line as well. Flipping that to the other side and doing the same. So find the center of each one on this side. So for 1 inch, the center is going to be 1/2 inch, and another one here is 1/2 inch. And I'm going to go down by 5.5 inches in the front, 5.5 inches right here, and 5.5 inches right here. And I'm going to draw my dart legs. And for this one, I'm going to find the center as well. Right? And I'm going to go down by 3.5 inches in the front. Sorry. I'm going to join my dart legs. 3.5 inches in the front. And join dart legs. From P to G. And from Q to H. So that's the end of the skirt pattern. So for the armhole, A to B is the length of my armhole, and it's 20 inches. Now you can make your armhole as long or as short as you want it to be. You're going to need 4 measurements for the sleeve pattern, which is the sleeve length, your cap height, armhole measurement, and your biceps. So your sleeve length is how long you want it to be. And to get the cap height, on your body or your body form, measure from this point to where your bicep stops. So this point right here to where your bicep stops could be about 5 to 6 inches depending on your size. And then to get your armhole measurement, you're basically gonna measure this with a flexible ruler and not your measuring tape. And you're gonna measure the back as well. You're gonna measure your front armhole and your back armhole with a flexible ruler and not a measuring tape. You're gonna add it together and you're gonna divide that in 2. So if I have 8 inches for my front armhole and 8 inches for my back armhole, if I add that together, that's 16 inches. Divided by 2 will make it 8 inches plus 1/4 inch. So that's 8 1/4 inch. The 1/4 inch is basically for your ease allowance. And then finally, you're gonna measure your biceps. So just put a measuring tape around your bicep and figure out what that is and then mark. Make sure that when you're measuring it, you're also moving your tape around so that it's not too tight when you eventually stitch your fabric. A to C is going to be the cap height. The next measurement is A to C, which is your cap height. Like I said, your cap height is from this point on your body down to the end of your biceps, which is usually about 5 to 6 inches. It's 5.5 if you're a size 6, it's 5'8" if you're a size 8, it's 5 3/4 if you're a size 10, 5'7", if you're a size 12, it's 6 inches if you're a size 14, 6 1/8 inch if you're a size 16, and 6 1/4 if you're size 18. So that's basically the sleeve measurement chart. That's like the standard measurement in case you don't know what to use. Before I started filming, I marked 5 inches from A. But I'm going to add 1/2 inch because I think I'll be safer with 5.5 inches, not 5. So my cap height, which is A to C, is going to be 5.5 inches. Wow, that was a lot of talking. I have a headache. Okay, and I'm going to draw my line. The second line, so I'm going to label that as C. So to get my C to D, I'm going to measure C to B and divide that in 2. My C to B is 14.5 inches, which makes it 7 1/4, I think, right? D. So from D, I'm going to go down and mark 3/4 inch. That's going to be my D1. I'm going to square out A, C, D1, and B. Get the armhole measurement. You're going to measure the armhole on your body's front and the armhole on your body's back. You're going to add that and divide it in 2. Whatever you get, that's what you're going to apply here. I'm going to put my ruler on A and pivot until I get to 9 inches. The next one is going to be C to E, which is basically your bicep circumference divided by 2. So my bicep circumference divided by 2 is 6 3/8. Mark. Next thing we're going to do is measure this point and this point. Find the middle ground and then mark, and just mark. So that middle is going to be our E. So I'm going to draw my line from A to E. After drawing the line from A to E, you're going to divide it in 4. 8.5 inches. So 8.5 inches divided by 4. 8.5 inches divided by 4 is 218. So these are our marks. And I'm going to label that as G, H, K. So whatever I get here, C to E, is going to be my C to F. F. Mr. F. I'm going to draw a line from A to F and also divide it in 4 like I did the front. It's going to be L, M, N. Okay, so measure C to E. Whatever you get there, you're going to subtract 2 inches, and that's what you're going to apply for your B to O. And I'm going to do whatever I get here for my B to O, I'm going to apply here. So this is O. And this is going to be P. I draw my line from my O to E and from P to F. I will be going down by 3/8 inch. which is basically counting like toothpicks. It's like 3 toothpicks. In 1, 2, 3, 3/8 of an inch. And for H, you're going to do 1/4 of an inch out, which is 2 toothpicks. 1, 2. And then this K is going to be 5/8 of an inch out, which is 5 toothpicks. L out, 3/4 of an inch. M out is 3/16 of an inch. N in is 1/2 an inch. And that's the end of the sleeve. The first thing I'm going to do is get my waist to ankle, which is 45 inches. For my waist to my ankle, that's going to be the length of my pants, which is 45 inches. Label this A. So A to D is going to be my crotch depth plus 3/4 of an inch, which makes it 12 3/4 of an inch. This D. So to get my D to C, I'm going to measure my A to D and then divide that in 3. So to get my knee depth, I'm going to measure my B to D and divide that in 2. So B to D is 32.5 inches, 16.25 of an inch plus 1 inch, which makes it 17.25 of an inch. And this is going to be the knee, and I'll label this as E. Before we mark. The back, and this is going to be the front. C to F is going to be back hip plus 1/4 of an inch, which makes it 10.25. And I'll label that as F. And I'll label this as G. We'll do the same thing right here, 10.25. So I'm going to measure G to H, and 12.5 inches divided by 2, that's 6.25, right? And that's going to be my G to X. So 12.5 inches divided by 2 is 6.25, and I'm going to mark that right here, and this is going to be my X. To get G to I, I'm going to measure this and divide that in 2, and so 10.25 is 5.188. And I'm going to call this I. I hope you guys can see. So I got my I by measuring D to G and dividing that in 2. So D to G is 10.25, divided by 2 is 5.18. So that's what I measured and marked right here. So the next one is C to J. C to J is 9.58 plus 1/4 of an inch. So 9.58 plus 1/4 of an inch is going to be 9 3/4. So this is J. So whatever I get here, I'm going to do here and here as well. And I'm going to draw a line to connect everything. This is L and K. Now to get my K to M, I'm going to measure D to K and divide that in 4. So D to K is 9 3/4 divided by 4 is going to give me 238, which is right here. 1, 2, 3, mark, and then draw. you connect. So this is going to be M. So from H to N, I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to call this N. N to O is the waist arc plus 2¼ of an inch. From N to P is 3 inches. And then label that as P. Measure 1 inch, mark. Measure 1¼ of an inch, mark. And then measure another 1 inch and mark. So these are going to be the darts. So I'll just mark the center of each dart and I'll square down by 4½ inches. And then draw the dart legs. L to Q is the waist divided by 4 plus 1¼ of an inch, which is 9 inches. From L to R, I'm going to measure and mark 3 inches. R, and then measure ½ inch. And then from here to the next one is going to be 1¼ of an inch. Mark, and then measure another ½ inch. So these are going to be the dart legs. From N, I'm going to go up by 1/4 of an inch and call that S. S. From G, you're going to go up like this at an angle by about 2 inches. Next thing I'm going to do is draw the S to the X, all the way to the I, and I'm going to make sure that my curve touches this line right here. So the first one is S to X, and then X to I. For the front, I'm going to draw a diagonal line as well, 1½ inches. 1½ inches. This is the U. K to L is 12¾ half of that 6¼ so K to X is 6¼ of an inch. So this is going to be my X. The X is located at the same spot. The X at the back is located at the exact same measurement in front as well. The next thing I'm going to do is draw a line from X touching U and touching this M right here. So for L, I will go down by 1/4 of an inch. This is Q. So I'm going to draw a line from L to Q and from S to O. And right here as well to C. To get my crease line, I'll measure D to I, which is 15½, divided by 2 is 7¾ plus 1/4 of an inch, which makes it 8 inches. So I'm going to draw my V from this point, from D towards the crotch. I'm going to measure 8 inches and mark. And mark. I'll draw a straight line from here, touching here, touching here, touching there. So to get my crease line for the front, I'll do the same thing that I did in the back. I'll measure D to M. Whatever I get, I'm going to divide that in 2. From M, I'm going to go inwards by ½ an inch, and I'm going to do the same thing on I. Go in by ½ an inch. I'm going to go in by ½ an inch as well, so that the crotch isn't like too out there. On the crease line for the back, I'll measure 4½ inches this way and 4½ inches this way. This way and 4½ inches this way. For the front, it's going to be 4 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll draw a line from I all the way down here. And I'm going to join it from C all the way down to this point. hip, crotch, knee. So for the front and back bodies, I added 1.5 inches to the waistline. On the neckline, I went up by 1/4 inch on the back and down by 1/4 inch on the front. And on the front, center front line, I added 1/4 inch towards the center front because I felt like it was too tight. So those were the only changes that I made. And after hours of drafting, these are the 4 foundation blocks for every dress, every blouse, every sleeve variation, every pair of pants. All these designs come from these 4 blocks. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.